Hello, everybody. Today, I want to talk about the spiritual world and the material world and how they work together. And they're both, in my opinion, equally important. But I believe there is a spiritual world, and it's difficult to talk about. It's difficult to put my beliefs into words because it's so intuitive these days. And I don't I don't speak about it a whole lot. Sometimes with close friends, my beliefs are pretty out there, you could say. But I believe there is a force that I would call the spirit world that expresses itself through us and anything else in the material world. And I don't believe that we have free will. I believe that everything we do is a result of this spirit expressing itself through us. And I believe that we are really no different than anything else in the material world in the grand scheme of things. But we have to put this importance on ourselves and on other human beings in order to live a good life, in order to survive. And it's kind of contradictory because freedom is the thing that I value the most. It's my highest value, but it's contradictory to say we don't actually have free will. But I'm living in a way that allows the spirit world to express itself through me. And it's really, it's difficult to say. I know there's that contradiction there. I know that if I say I'm doing something, that implies that I have a will and that I'm able to do this. But really, everything I'm saying to you now and everything I do is an expression of that spirit world. And I feel like it's looking at it from the outside and first hearing it, it may seem like a very negative way to look at life, that we don't have free will and we're controlled by something else. But I believe it's very positive and we act as if we have free will. And I won't speak about that much because of the negativity associated with it, that we are just acting. But it's what I believe. I believe that it takes some weight off of my shoulders to know that I don't have the pressure of having to make everything perfect, having to make the perfect decisions and having to stress over the decisions that I make, even though I do sometimes. I mean, we're human, we all do. But my goal is to put myself in a state of flow and to allow the spirit world or the spirit or the energy or God or whatever you want to call it to express itself through me. And when I when I give myself opportunities to go into that state of flow, whether it's through music or exercise or meditation or contemplation or reading and all these types of things, I'm setting myself up for true happiness that's not related to pleasure. When I get too caught up in the material world is when I'm focused on the pleasure of this outside material world. And that is not true happiness, that's pleasure, which, as we know, on that hedonic treadmill, we have short bursts of pleasure and a life really of misery that is interrupted by these short bursts of pleasure that don't last long, because as soon as you get one pleasure, you want to go to the next. And that's getting too caught up in the material world. The material world is important to focus on at times, but when we get too caught up in it and we ignore the spiritual world, we ignore our opportunities to get into a state of flow and to do the things that we were born to do. Any anxiety that we have is just some frustration that's going to work itself out. It's the spiritual world working its way through us. And if you keep that in mind, that is going to help you resolve that anxiety faster, to know that you just have to let things go. You have to let the spirit world or the spirit or whatever you want to call it. I don't have a specific name for it. Maybe I need to think of one, but to let it express itself through us. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm having some anxiety, but the spirit world is expressing itself through me to give this message to you. And I'm letting my body be the vessel for that. And I do want to talk about some specific things today before I go too far off on a tangent, even though I don't feel like I've expressed that adequately. I'll get plenty of opportunities in the future to do that. What are things that you need to know to balance the spiritual and material world? Typically, in this culture, we focus too much on the material world. So I'm going to assume that we need to focus more on the spiritual world. It could be the opposite. It could be we're too caught up in the spiritual world and we need to go back into reality, so to speak. Maybe that is your issue. Maybe you meditate so much that you don't eat, or there are things in the material world that you're ignoring that are important also. But from my perspective, generally, I tend to focus too much on the material world, and that's been my issue. And so I'm going to go from that perspective, and maybe we'll open up. We'll have some comments from some viewers, maybe that will take the opposite perspective and say that they need to focus more on the material world. But number one is tame your desires. So, how do you do that? That's a complicated process. You have to first realize that the desires that you have are most likely material desires. They are probably unnecessary. I mean, there are different kinds of desires. I'm paraphrasing Epicurus, but he labeled certain desires as natural but unnecessary, and he other desires unnatural and unnecessary, and other desires natural and necessary. So natural and necessary, of course, are food, shelter, health, things like that that you need in order to keep your body alive. And those desires are okay to indulge in as long as we don't get too carried away, of course. We're not, we need to look at food as nutrition and not dopamine. It's one of those things that's tricky because we have to eat to survive, but sometimes we eat too much and you can't abstain from food like you can other drugs. What is natural and unnecessary, like sexual desires, are natural but unnecessary. So typically, Epicurus doesn't advocate for indulgence in those desires. And that's a whole different subject. I'm not going to get into that too much right now. But at least knowing that, I think, is a good starting place to know that we really need to tame that. If we're going to indulge it, we need to be careful about how we indulge in that. And then you have unnatural and unnecessary. That would be like drugs, for example. That's something we should stay away from because it makes, I mean, you know what it does. We're adults here. If you've done drugs before, you know that it gives you a short burst of pleasure, makes pretty much everything else in your life boring, and just totally resets your pleasure set point to where you can't get in a state of flow and you can't live a happy life because you're chasing the pleasure. You're either looking for that drug or you're you're crashing out and you're pretty much in bad shape. And I'm drawing a blank here. So I'm not ready to play yet though. So I'm gonna go on to the next thing is taming your desires also involves number two, which is reducing temptation. So how do you tame your desires? You set your life up so that temptation is not around you. Even if you think that you have your desires tamed, we don't want to tempt ourselves because we're humans. And in this culture, everything is just set up to suck you in. I live in Las Vegas, so it's the prime example of desires all over the place. People trying to hustle you, trying to get your money, and trying to get you to go to clubs, go to strip clubs, go to casinos. Hustlers are all over. Everybody's got their hand out and they offer things in exchange. You've got the street performers, which are kind of cool to watch, but I don't get too close because they're trying to they're trying to get money from you basically. And they know this city is built to basically take advantage of you and take advantage of your desires, and so you have to be really careful of that. And in Las Vegas, where you travel to, wherever you live, you're going to have something that is in your path that is trying to pull you off of your path. And you can set your life up, even if, let's say, I keep using this example of food, but let's say food is your weakness. It's as simple as don't have food in your house that is going to cause you to overindulge. So you're setting your life up the best you can so that you're not tempted. And what that involves for you, I don't know, because I don't know exactly where you are. Maybe tell me in the comments what is your weakness and what is your desire that you need to tame, and we can talk about that. But that's number two is reduce temptation. So you're taming your desires, number one. Number two is reduce temptation by getting yourself away from the actual things that produce those desires. So taming your desires, number one, is more internal. It's a level of realization of what desires are natural and necessary, what desires are natural and unnecessary, and what desires are unnatural and unnecessary, and then going from there. Number two, as we said, reduce temptation by keeping those things in the outside world away from you as much as possible. That's a tricky one too, because if you try to fight your desires head on, you're going to lose. So you have to be careful about, once you're faced with something, don't try to fight it. If you have a craving, just realize that that craving will pass whether you indulge in it or not. And that's important, and it bears repeating, is that whether you indulge in it or not, your craving will pass. So if you keep that in mind and you have a craving for something that's unnatural and unnecessary, or natural and unnecessary, and you know that it's not good for you, know that that craving is going to eventually pass, and it doesn't matter whether you indulge in it or not. So you might as well not indulge in it. Let it pass. Feel it. Suffer. That's part of the problem in this culture, is that we never want to suffer. We think that when we're suffering, we have to alleviate that, because we have a world that is set up for, I mean, don't get me wrong, our standard of living has gone down in some ways to the point where life isn't always easy. But in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier than it has ever been. And so we have these things that we need within arm's reach all around us. And it's so tempting. It's so tempting and easy to indulge in these distractions. But if we realize that these cravings are going to go away, whether we indulge in them or not. So just sit with some discomfort. Discomfort is going to be good for you. It's going to make you tougher. It's going to make you feel more pleasure, more happiness in the long run. It's why we exercise too. Recognize abundance is number 4. So that means a lot of what triggers our desires is a scarcity mindset. When we think things are scarce, and we might not realize this on a conscious level, but it's a deep-seated belief that things are scarce, and that could come from the way that you're raised, or just something natural within you that believes that something is scarce when it's not. And that could be love, it could be money, it could be food, it could be anything that you indulge in. And it's subjective whether you want to view something as abundant or scarce. It's your choice how you want to view it. So you're going to be better off. You're going to have a better life if you view those things that are necessary as abundant, and start from there. And that is going to cause you to not want to be so quick to indulge in these desires. And so number 4, this is important. Cultivate a life that gives you opportunities to enter a state of flow. So how do you enter a state of flow? We've talked about this before. playing music for me is the ultimate state of flow because it is a mixture of the spiritual and the material world. I have my guitar, it's material, spiritual world expressing itself through me. There's So Nietzsche had, I think his very first published work was The Birth of Tragedy, and it's my favorite by him. And he describes, I don't know if I want to get into this because I'm not going to be able to explain it very well, but he describes metaphorically, he talks about the Greek gods of Apollo and Dionysus and how they are different and how they work in harmony. To me, they're both part of the spiritual world. But, sorry, I should say Apollo is the material world, Dionysus is the spiritual world. So, Apollo is the god of order. And when you think about music, you think about order and structure between the notes and harmony. Yet Dionysus is the god of just pure emotion, and he uses drunkenness as an analogy because it's untamed desire and expression and all this coming at you. So with music, you have this expression that you put into order, and or if you're just listening to it, it's put into order for you, but it's a beautiful thing. It's the ultimate expression, the ultimate state of flow you can get into, whether you're listening to it or you're making music. And how do you do that? Well, it depends on, look at your hobbies. What hobbies do you have? Do you have hobbies that can put you in a state of flow? Exercise, meditation. As I've said before, meditation's a little bit tough for me because I need to be doing something with my hands. So it kind of depends on your personality. Maybe you like to build things. Maybe you like to read. There are plenty of things you can do to put yourself in a state of flow, but the more you give yourself opportunities for that, the more likely, excuse me, you're going to have a good life and a balance between the spiritual and the material world. So you're indulging, I don't even know if I want to use that word because that is more focused on, I think, desires that are not necessary and maybe unnatural, but you are indulging in this state of flow to an extent. And if you give yourself more opportunities to be in that state, you're going to have a good life. The destination doesn't matter. Remember, we talked about how. I apologize. I'm going to go back in this video and see if the mic on my phone picked everything up okay, but I forgot to turn this one on. So we'll see. I might have to redo this whole thing, but we'll see. And so you're cultivating a life. This is number 4 still. You're cultivating a life that gives you opportunities to be in a state of flow. And the more you can do that, it doesn't matter exactly where you're going because you're on a trajectory. When you're putting yourself in a state of flow, you're making progress and you have. Sorry about that. So, and one of the hardest things to do is making progress when you have a setback, because if you've already made progress before and then you get slammed back, it's harder, in my opinion, to put yourself in a state of mind where you're going back to where you were if you're caught up in the material world because you think that you were supposed to be at this spot and something unexpected came and knocked you back. And then now, not only have you been thrown off your path, you have to get back to where you were before you can go where you thought you were headed. You were so far ahead before, and then you got thrown back. And for me, for instance, I just had a surgery that has caused me to physically have to recuperate, and it's frustrating. I look at myself and I can tell that my body is different now, and I have to recover to where I was before, and where I was before wasn't good enough for me either, if I'm being honest. Now, I'm working on stuff too. I'm human. I need to practice what I preach. So it's things that I'm working on, is that it doesn't matter the setback, because when I'm exercising, I can get into a state of flow. And that state of flow, it's important to challenge yourself a little bit, but not too much. That's the tricky part, because if you're too, if you let laziness overcome you and you don't have any challenge at all, you're not in a state of flow. You're in a state of pleasure and boredom, and it's going to put you in this cycle on the hedonic treadmill. If you're too overwhelmed, it's too much anxiety, you can't learn, you can't go into a state of flow, because the universe or the spirit is not expressing itself through you. It's just you're you're caught, you're clogged. And so it has to be a slight challenge, like your zone of proximal development. And I talked about this before. I taught English as a second language, and students learn best through context when they're learning a second language as an adult. If they have about one or two words that are unknown for every 100 words that are known, that way it's not overwhelming. They can learn words through the context of a normal conversation, and they can go into a state of flow, but it's a delicate balance. Same way with anything else. If I'm trying to play songs that are too difficult for me, I can't go into a state of flow. If it's too easy, I can't go into a state of flow. There's a balance there to go into a state of flow. That was number 4. Cultivate a life that gives you opportunities to enter a state of flow. The final one is most important. Number 5 is learn to dance between the spiritual and material world. You thought I was just going to say learn to dance. Maybe that's important too. Maybe that puts you in a state of flow, just learning to dance in general. But metaphorically, learning to dance between the spiritual and material world means you can tell when you're leaning too far one way or too far the other. So maybe you're getting too caught up in the spiritual world, and you're not focusing on the material world. You're not focusing on your bodily needs. You're not taking care of your house. You're neglecting the material world. That's important, to cultivate the material world. And maybe the flip side of that is you're too caught up in the material world and worldly desires, and you're neglecting the spiritual world. So learn to dance between those. When you see that, it's okay to be unbalanced. You just simply rebalance yourself. That's the dance. It's not that you're supposed to be perfect and have this perfect balance between them all the time. You're going to lean one way or the other. And then when you notice that is when you recalibrate and you lean the other way a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and play. This was a little bit messier than I thought. I apologize for that, but maybe I shouldn't be apologizing, because I'm improving, and I appreciate you listening and being patient. And I'm going to try to get myself in a little bit of state of flow and just give you a couple bars here before we wrap up. Okay, so it's not always easy to enter into a state of flow. Like there, I was thinking about my mic because I meant to switch some things around, make it sound better, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to stop playing to do that. But I'm not going to edit. That's one of the things I'm trying not to do so much is edit, because I want you to see the authentic, the real me. That's what this channel is about. I want you to see me improve. I want you to see me struggle. I want you to see me fall and fall backwards and go forward and witness what happens here. And it's good for me. I hope that it's good for you as well, but it's good for me because it's making myself accountable for basically practicing what I preach. And so I'm going to wrap up there, and I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to the channel. And I promise to continue to improve, to bring you better content, and leave comments. Feedback is always welcome. Have a great day. See you next time.